Hello students, today we'll study another important chapter from your class 12 syllabus. The name of the chapter is Lost Spring and it is written by Jung. In this particular video, we will study the theme of the chapter. The detailed explanation I'll be giving to you in English. It consists of two stories. Both the stories I'm going to give you the detailed explanation. We'll justify the title. We'll learn something about the author as well. Now coming to the author. The story is written by Jung. Now she was born in 1964 at Rourkela in Orissa and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and United States of America. Her parents were both writers and Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and a columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad and has authored several books. The story Lost Spring is an excerpt from her book Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood. Other books written by Jung include When a Place Becomes a Person, which was written in 1977, and The Song of India, which was written in 1990. Jung is noted for her lively and vivid descriptions, but she rarely provides any solution to the many problems she describes. Now coming to the main theme, the author Jung highlights in this particular chapter the plight of street children who were forced into labor early in life and denied the opportunity to school. Jung analyzes the grinding poverty and tradition which condemns these children to a life of exploitation. The callousness, ruthlessness of society, not worrying about their plight, and the political class to the suffering of the poor is also brought about in this particular story. Now the story Lost Spring describes the pitiable condition of poor children who have been forced to miss the joy of childhood due to the socio-economic condition that prevails in the man-made world. These children are denied the opportunity of schooling and forced into labor early in life. Jung through this story gives voice to eliminate child labor by educating the children and to enforce the laws against child labor by the government strictly. The message is to put an end to child exploitation and let all children enjoy the days of spring and enjoy. Now justifying the title of the story. The title of the story is Lost Spring. Now the title Lost Spring is a very well chosen title, I believe. Spring, is the best season of the entire year. It is full of color, fragrance and freshness. It is also a season of renewal and growth when you can see the entire earth is full of flowers. It's so much beautiful. Similarly, the childhood of human life is full of joy, pleasure and play. It is also a time of getting more skill and knowledge and going to school. Just like anywhere, children in the world are a source of great joy. Spring is the best season of the year. But unfortunately, millions of children like Saheb and Mukesh experience no spring in their lives, for their childhood is consumed in making a living. Education, play and pleasure are not for them to enjoy. They are compelled to undertake hazardous work to support themselves and their families. Thus, the title rightly brings out how child laborers are deprived of the blessings of childhood. They never experience spring in their life at all. Now coming to the first story, there are two stories in this chapter as I told you earlier. Now the first story is about a boy named Saheb. And the title of the story is Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. Now, this boy, Saheb, stays in a place called Seemapuri, which is in the outskirts of the city of Delhi. Now, every morning, the writer sees the young ragpicker boy who visits the garbage dump near her house and searches for gold in it. Now, what does gold refer to here? That's a very important question which has been asked quite time and again in CBSE. The gold here refers to anything precious which can be sold for money. For the rag pickers, things like shoes, money, bags, scraps of metal, anything that can be sold for money which they find in the rags is gold. So the boy searches for such precious things in the garbage dumps. The boy's name is Saheb. His home is in Dhaka, which was in the middle of lush green fields. They had left it many years ago as many storms destroyed their homes and the fields. So they left home and shifted to Delhi. Now, one day the writer questioned Saheb, why doesn't he go to school? He replied that there were no schools in the area where he lived. The writer asked him jokingly that if she opened a school, would he attend it? Saheb says that he would join the writer's school, and after a few days he runs up to her to ask whether her school was ready. Now the writer replied that it takes a lot of time to build a school. Now she felt ashamed at making a false promise. She had just said it jokingly, if I'm going to open a school, will you come or not? No, she never intended to open a school at all. But then she realized that once she was feeling guilty, so then she realized that such promises were made quite frequently every now and then in the cities, in the major cities. If you see in metros, every now and then you see so many people say, I'll do this tomorrow, but the tomorrow never comes. So all such promises are not meant to be fulfilled. Hence, she was no different to them. Now the writer had known Saheb for a few months. One day she asked him his name. He replied that his name was Saheb-E-Alam. The writer thought that the boy did not know the meaning of his name, and if he came to know that his name meant Lord of the Universe, because Saheb-E-Alam, Saheb means Lord, Alam means universe, so his name meant Lord of the Universe, he would not be able to believe it himself. His name was opposite to his life. Contrary to his name, Saheb is poverty-stricken, barefooted, homeless rag picker who scrounges the garbage dumps of Delhi to earn his livelihood. Thus his name is totally in contrast to the state of his misfortune. He went around the streets with a group of friends. It was like an army of boys who did not wear any footwear. They appeared in the morning like the morning birds and disappeared at noon. Just like the morning birds get up early in the morning to find food for the young ones, similarly they get up early in the morning to find something in the garbage dumps. So they are compared to the morning birds. The writer could recognize all of them as she had been seeing them for the past few months. Now the writer asked one of them that why he is not wearing any footwear. The boy simply replied that his mother did not get them down from the shelf. So basically shoes are also a luxury for them. So their parents do not consider it necessary at all. For them, khane ko hi mil jaye, that is also more than enough. Now the boy who was wearing a different shoe in each foot said that even if his mother would have given him the footwear, he would have thrown it away. He meant that the boy was not wearing footwear because he did not want to wear one. The writer asked the second boy the reason for wearing a different shoe in each foot. He did not reply and shuffled his feet as he tried to hide his shoes. A third boy confessed that he was eager to get a pair of shoes as he had never owned one all his life. She further tells us that as she traveled across the country, she had seen many children walking barefoot in the cities as well as the villages. The reason that they were barefoot not due to lack of money to buy footwear, but being barefoot was a tradition for them. The writer wondered and concluded that the reason of it being a tradition was a mere excuse to hide the fact that they were so poor that they could not afford footwear. So they simply said that it was a fashion, but actually it is not possible that it was fashion. They could not afford it, so they were kind of making an excuse to it. Now the writer then narrates a story told to her by a man from Udupi. Now Udupi is a small town in Karnataka. His father was a priest in a temple and he used to pray to goddess to bless him with a pair of shoes. When he finally got shoes, he prayed that he may never lose them. Har roj wo mandir ke paas jaake he used to pray, oh goddess, grant me shoes. And then once he finally got, he said, I always want shoes under my feet. So in 30 years, the writer states there has been a massive change in economic condition of priests. They have plastic chairs and the children wear proper school uniform with socks and shoes. The writer wants to convey that the financial position of the priests at the temple had improved over the last 30 years, but these children like Saheb have remained poor over the years. So basically, she now comments on our psychology. We are ready to donate to temples, but we are not ready to help these poor people who work day in and day out along with their families. So they have remained poor throughout and have not been able to come out of the vicious circle of poverty. Now, the writer then describes the area where these rag pickers live. Simapuri, located on the outskirts of Delhi, in 1971, when these rag pickers had migrated from Bangladesh, the area had been a wasteland. Simapuri was still a wasteland, but now it was not empty as almost 10,000 rag pickers lived there in the structures made of mud with roofs made of thin sheets of tin or tarpaulin. There were no sewage, drainage or running water facility in Simapuri. They lived in unhygienic conditions for the last 30 years. The politicians of the area have provided them with ration cards and these people are vote banks of these politicians. The writer asked a group of women who were wearing torn saris that why did they leave their homes in Dhaka. They replied that if they were able to satisfy the hunger of their families and sleep well at night, they were happier to live in Simapuri than their fields in Dhaka, which was swept away by frequent floods. So basically, khane ko to mil raha hai at least. So politicians, they have just provided them with ration cards. They have not done anything for them. They've just provided them with ration cards so that they can act as vote banks. So they are the vote banks of the politicians. And because of those ration cards, they can buy food at very cheaper price. It is believed BPL, below poverty line people can buy wheat at 2 rupees a kg and 3 rupees kg for rice. So they can buy food cheaper. So they are ready to stay here because at least खाने को तो मिलता है यहाँ पे. These people traveled in search of food and set up temporary homes. Their children started helping their parents at a very young age. Saheb was happy to say that sometimes he even found a rupee or even a 10 rupee note in the dump, and at times when one finds a silver coin in the garbage dump, he kept on searching, hoping to find more. For parents, garbage is means of survival as their family's daily bread depends on it. For elders, garbage is means of survival, but for children, it is like adventure wrapped in wonder. So there's a difference between the psychology. For parents, they know that if we do not find something to eat today, they will not, how will they feed their families? But for children, it is like, what will we find today? It's more like an adventure game. Chalo, aaj dekhe, aaj kya milta hai. Now, one winter morning, the writer saw Saheb standing by the fence of a club. He was watching a game of tennis being played by two young men. Saheb liked the game but could not play it. He told the writer that he would go inside the club when it would be closed. He was allowed to take swings by the guard there. Now, at this point of time, again, the author points out the psychology of us middle class people as well. We are not ready to mingle around with these people. Once these people have finished off with this game, the guard will let him in once the game is over. So we also don't want to mingle around with these people. The writer saw that Saheb was also wearing tennis shoes which were mismatched with his faded dress. Saheb was not bothered by this fact that they were discarded shoes by a rich boy or had hole in them, as he could not afford anything better than that. He walked barefoot, and to wear a shoe even with a hole was like a dream for him. Although Saheb's dream of wearing shoes had been partially fulfilled, but his desire to play tennis would never be fulfilled. Now, any person who has walked barefoot in hot summers in the northern India and in such cold, wintry winter season would realize the importance of shoes. So Saheb is ready to wear discarded shoes as well. So one morning, the writer met Saheb on the road. He was on his way to the milk booth holding a steel container. He told her that he had got a job at the nearby tea stall. He would earn 800 rupees a month and get meals too. He had lost the carefree look as now Saheb was working for someone else and was carrying his master's container. He was burdened with responsibility. Earlier, as a rag picker, Saheb would carry his own bag and was his own master. Now, he was no longer his own master. The steel container seems heavier than his plastic bag. He is a servant at the tea stall and has become an overwhelmed, unhappy child with no trace of childhood left in him. Now, here the writer wants to compare the life of a businessman with a serviceman. Although we get a monthly salary after a month, but at least you're working under somebody. You're no longer your own master. Initially, Saheb was just like a businessman. He was no longer working under anybody. So that is a basic difference the author wants to point out. He is not happy now because initially he could work at any time. जितने बजे जाना है चले जाओ. But now he has to follow the whims and fancies of his master. So Saheb is not at all happy. Now comes the second story. The title of the story is I Want to Drive a Car. Now this is the story of a boy named Mukesh. He's a child laborer in a glass factory in Firozabad. He wishes to be a motor mechanic. He wants to learn to drive a car. His family is unaware that child labor is illegal and banned by law by the government. Close to 20,000 child laborers are employed in Firozabad in the bangle making industry. His entire family works in the bangle making job. But Mukesh is different. He wants to drive a car and be a motor mechanic. Now, the author points out the working condition in the glass factories. These children work under high temperatures in dingy means small, ill-lit cells. They're very poorly ventilated. Children work without proper eye care, hence they lose their eyesight at a very early age. Their eyes are more adjusted to darkness than light because the entire day they spend their time within those small dingy cells working in back-breaking posture. They become old before they get into adulthood. So, and they lose their eyesight as well. Now, the living conditions in Firozabad, it has stinking lanes, smell so badly, choked with garbage. Houses have crumbling walls. चोर की मारोगे तो टूट जाएगी wall. Wobbly doors, वो खड़खड़ वाले doors होते हैं ना, that's a wobbly doors, and no windows. Humans and animals live together in these hovels. So that is how these people, who work in the bangle making industry in Firozabad live. Now, the house where Mukesh lived was a partially constructed hut. In one corner was a firewood stove made with dead grass. A vessel with spinach leaves was kept on it. So Mukesh had requested the author to come along because he wanted to show his house. Now, once they entered, he saw that there was no proper gas. The lady who was cooking food was sitting on the ground preparing food. And on the ground, there were aluminium plates with chopped vegetables in them. This lady was cooking spinach. And who is she? This thin young woman was cooking evening meal for the family. Her eyes were full of smoke emanating from the stove, but she was still cheerful and smiled to see the writer. Now, she was the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. Although she was not much older than Mukesh, she was a responsible person and was worthy to get respect from the family as a daughter-in-law of the family. She took care of 3 men at a very early age, her husband, Mukesh, and their father. As Mukesh's father entered the house, the daughter-in-law covered her face behind her veil. Mukesh's father had worked all his life. Firstly, he was worked as a tailor, then as a bangle maker. He was still not able to either renovate the house or send his sons to school. He had just managed to teach them the skill of making bangles. Now, the author talks about Mukesh's grandmother's views of life. Mukesh's grandmother justified her son by saying that he was destined to make bangles. It had been their family procession. She had seen her husband become blind due to the dust from polishing the glass bangles, but still she did not stop her children from joining the same industry. She said that their family had got this art of bangle making from God, and so they had to carry on the tradition. So this talks about the superstition that prevails there. Glass bangles can be seen everywhere in Firozabad, in the backyard, in the next house, in the yard, and even in the streets of the town. There were huge spiral bunches of bangles in different colors like gold, green, blue, pink, purple. There were bangles of all the colors of the rainbow. They were dumped on the handcarts for sale and pushed by men along the streets of Firozabad. Now, there was another young girl by the name of Savita. She was sitting with an elderly woman and they were joining pieces of glass to make bangles. She thought that Savita would realize that bangles were a symbol of Suhag when she would herself become a bride. That day, she would cover her hands with a red-colored veil. Veil means ghungat kar legi. Color her hands with henna. Henna means mehndi, and wear red-colored bangles on her wrist. Her grandmother complained that she had not enjoyed a hearty meal in her lifetime. एक वक्त भी शेर भर खाना नहीं खाया. After working so hard, families and families are working together. Children, right from small children to elders, to their female counterparts. But still, they are not getting enough food to eat as well. The woman's husband grumbles that he does not know anything other than bangle making. All that he has been able to accomplish is to make a house for the family to live in. Now, again, the author comments. Now, this is also a big thing in India. If you stay in India, it is a big thing having a house, having a shed over your head, because you see so many people sleeping on the roads as well. So, having a house is also a big achievement in itself. Now, the narrator points out, no progress, no development has taken place in Firozabad in years, despite years of mind-numbing toil. Poverty, illiteracy, dissatisfaction prevails in each and every house. All laborers are victims of middlemen and touts. There is a fear of police, the lack of leadership, the trap of middlemen are the obstacles in the way of running cooperative society, because they believe that suppose if we complain, if we make a cooperative, then they'll be pushed behind the bars by the policemen. So there is a vicious circle of sahukars, middlemen, who are responsible to see that they do not progress. They're caught in a vicious circle of poverty, indifference, greed, injustice, which is meted out. Now, the children are victims of two worlds. Firstly, they are born in poverty-ridden families with the stigma of caste. Secondly, they are ruled by sahukars, middlemen, policemen, bureaucrats, politicians who do not want them to uh, uh, so, um, flourish at all. They take the entire major portion of the profit. These, although the bangle makers are working so hard, they're providing bangles to the entire city, entire country of India, the entire India. All the houses you see, all the married women wear glass bangles. And the major hub is in Firozabad. But still, who is earning the profit? It is the middlemen, the policemen, bureaucrats, and the politicians. Now, their courage is dissolved, their backbone is broken, the desire to dream and the dare is snubbed in childhood. They have seen that their parents have taken the initiative and they could not do anything. So, they do not want to take an initiative because they fear the police. Now Mukesh is an exception. He aspires to be a motor mechanic. He also realizes that dreaming of aeroplanes would be overreaching himself. Ironically, few planes fly over Firozabad. So the narrator asks him, why, if you want to do something different, why don't you fly an aeroplane? Instead of driving a car, it is better that you fly an aeroplane. So she says that probably that is beyond his means. So flying an aeroplane is beyond his means altogether. So that is what he says. So that is the end of the story. Because ambition itna sa hai, itna jada aeroplanes is beyond their reach altogether. So that is the end of the story. I hope you like it. If you like it, do like, share or comment or subscribe. Thank you. Happy learning.